Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another review, and today, Coloma. Coloma. This is a new game by Jonny Pac, who most people might recognise the name from Sierra West, a review I did fairly recently, actually, about a couple of months ago. Well, Coloma is another game from him that's getting a little bit of buzz, but I feel this one's flying under the radar a little bit more, certainly more so than Sierra West did, so I wanted to give this one a try. I saw it being played at my local game club every now and again, and it's like, okay, looks good, looks colourful. Interested to see how this goes. I liked Sierra West. Didn't blow my mind, but I liked it enough, and it certainly made for a good solo or two-player game. So what are you doing in this? Well, you are a pioneer in the Old West. You are trying to strike it rich, but everybody else is also trying to do this. So you and up to 5 other players are essentially trying to build bridges, survey rivers, deal with outlaws, go mine gold, build buildings, travel around local territories, all these different kind of things that you can do in order to, well, of course, score VP.
Of course!
Haha, you thought I was done with that meme, it's back. But with this one, it's very much a simultaneous action selection game. So you have these different actions that you can do. You have a pioneer and some cards that dictate, which area you want to go to. You select one of these like simultaneously with everybody else face down, and then it's revealed and your pioneers go out. But if too many pioneers go on the same space, i.e. they outnumber everybody else, then the location busts and it doesn't do one of its actions. Each one has 2 actions, a good and a bad, a good and a even more good one. The even more good one gets taken out if it's a bust one. So it's very much thinking about, okay, where do I think you're going to go? Are you going to go where I'm going? Maybe not. And you'll do this through several rounds, 3 rounds, I believe, per year. Oh no, sorry, 6 rounds a year, 6 rounds a year, 3 years. It's always hard to remember that one. And by the end of the game, you just basically do some endgame scoring, toss up the points and see who wins. So the majority of it is that simultaneous action selection with a bit of engine building, some resource management with dudes, which apparently are a thing in the West. I didn't know that, the more you know, and also gold itself and money. Of course, you need these sort of things. So is it any good? Does it fly under the radar for a reason, or should it be brought back into the limelight? Well, let's go into it in more detail. So duration first, this one kind of varies based on player count a lot. The game will try and tell you that it can be done in 60 to 90 minutes. It's actually not too inaccurate, actually, but it does depend a lot on the players and how many you're playing with. 60 minutes is actually pretty accurate for a 2-player game. Solo may take you a little bit less, but you are talking 60 to 90 minutes for the 2, 3, and possibly 4-player count. 5 and 6, I'm not as convinced. 5 and 6 is a minimum 90, and you're probably looking closer to 2 hours, which is going on a bit long for this game. But again, very dependent on the players, because yes, it's simultaneous selection, but you still have to resolve 6 players worth of turns, and that can, drag a game out, especially if people are a little bit slow or prone to analysis paralysis. If you've only got 3 of you there, then, well, great, it's nice and quick. So 60 to 90 will cater for the majority of people, but then if you want to add those extra players in, you have the facility to go to 5 or 6 players, and in some way I kind of recommend you do, but not because of its duration. You are going to have to accept this game is going to take a bit longer. So, ease of play, not the most complicated game in the world, actually. The graphic design doesn't necessarily help. I feel there could have been some improvements in some of the iconography and that, but the rulebook itself is generally pretty straightforward to use. I mean, it's laid out very colourful. You've got plenty enough tips for play. There's plenty of pictorial examples. It's actually a pretty decent rulebook around, bar one fairly important rule. There was one rule in this game that really just did not exist. It's like, seriously, where is it in the book? It's in there, kind of, but it's worded in such a weird, abstract way that it threw a lot of people off. And that's to do with the idea that with this barker tile, that you spin this little dial around, and this other tile covers up certain locations. But it's not clear from the building cards that you can build, because when you build building cards, if you go to that location, you get extra actions that you can do. But it wasn't 100% clear in the book whether the location still existed and you got those actions if the barker tile covered it. So we had to rule it at the time, because we didn't have a clear answer, that because it covered it up, it was in fact, because it's covered up, you don't get those location special bonuses. That is apparently the right way to do it. But believe me, it is not that easy to decipher it from this book. So one niggle there, but the rest of the book is actually fairly clear with a lot of pictures and, And sad to say, yes, 2-player variants, more on that later. But, for the most part, not too difficult. You should be able to get this, in your head and teach it relatively straightforward, but don't expect this to be like a pick up and play affair, But compared to Sierra West, though, this is definitely easier to pick up and play. In terms of who should be playing it, this is kind of I'd say light-ish. It's close to medium weight, light, but I wouldn't put this anywhere near gateway level. If you're brand new to this type of game, I wouldn't stick you in this. I would say this is kind of a medium weight game, but it's on the low end of medium weight. So tactics and strategy. This one is a hit and miss affair because the strategy in terms of path to victory is somewhat limited. There's really 3 main ways you get points. Let's ignore this mini expansion called hotels in there. Let's ignore that for a moment because you won't always use it. Let's see the 3 main ways you will get a decent amount of points. Laying tents on the trail map, building bridges and surveying rivers, and what was the other one? I'm building buildings in general. Now, building buildings in general and milling your deck of cards can get you a reasonable amount of points. The tents on the trail is not worth doing unless you have some uber combo of building actions or a character power that allows you to do it quicker. Because otherwise, going for the trail tents is too slow. You've got to first get enough speed from horses, then you've got to move this wagon on the map, then you've got to land in the specific post in order to be eligible to put a tent down there on a subsequent turn. So you have to basically go travel, stop, start, travel, stop, start, travel, stop, start, kind of like this all over this map. And you only get about 25 points after doing all the 10 areas that you can do. It's just not worth it. One character power allows you to basically cut the time it takes you to do that in half, which is like, oh, fantastic, I'll use this character to do that path. But frankly, I have seen everybody try it. I've tried it, Munchkin it, and it just never wins. It just never seems to work. The buildings does pretty well, as does milling the deck. They're kind of one and the same thing. They sort of link together, really. If you've got all those cards, generally you're building them. But yeah, that tends to work reasonably well. But really, this game is steering you in a linear fashion towards the bridges and the rivers. The game doesn't make it very clear that this is the primary thing you should be doing, but it really is. Those rivers alone get you bonuses and a fair amount of points, literally just for building like the river piece. But the bridge on top is basically endgame scoring. So based on the criteria, you can get up to something like 15 points per bridge. You can make 4 of them. And they're for easy stuff like, how many barrels do you have? How many horses do you have? How many rivers have you done? I mean, that's a ridiculous one. It's like, 4 points for every river you've done. Well, great. Well, I'm munchkining bridges anyway. Oh, great. I've just got 16 points for doing next to diddly squat. It really doesn't seem like that big a deal to get the points from those bridges. And if you max out 4 bridges and get really good, you are talking in the regions of 75 points you can earn from this. Take it from me, the game tends to end with somebody on between 100 to 125 points as the victor and maybe the second place player. 75 to 125, if I go for the highest mark, is quite a big chunk. So it's clear as day that the bridges are the main way to score, which means everybody is gunning for the bridges, which means that location tile is constantly busting because you have to deal with it. There are some other little points you can get for, the shootout round, but the shootout doesn't seem to do a lot for me. The idea is that at the end of each year, there's a shootout with these outlaws. If you take these barrel tiles that give you special bonuses and actions, then these outlaws appear and basically people can put their dudes in front of them to say, we're going to have a shootout, and it's, depending on whether the outlaws win or not, dictates bonuses and penalties for players based on how many people they contributed. You've seen this in other games. If you contribute nothing, you have the chance of losing dudes permanently, and they get you negative points. A pittance of negative points. The first 2 you lose you a point each. Whoop-de-doo! It's like I got 125 here. Losing 2 is not a big deal. And then after that, it's 2 each for the next 2, and then 3 each for the next 2. So the maximum points you can lose, 3, 6, 8, 10, I had to think about this, a long day, 12. 12 points you can lose from these. I think maybe you can go a bit further, but I've never seen anybody lose more than the 6. 12 points. Not that big a hit, to be perfectly honest with you. And while you're not messing around with these wretched things, the worst thing about losing dudes permanently is the fact you've lost dudes permanently. The points are really just not that big of a deal. You know, I've had several people win this game with 4 dudes, up to 4 dudes dead. So, really, what's the point in going to the shootout? Well, you can earn points if you contributed the most and second most and third most, but it starts off with a pretty lame amount of points and then it gets a bit better towards the end, but again, it's just not worth the dudes. I'd rather just build buildings for like 6 points apiece and all those cool actions, or build the bridges, which are going to get you a complete ton of points. Because unless you basically put the maximum amount of dudes there in the 5 slot, you got like a 2 slot, 3 slot, 4 slot, and the 5 slot, then you're not going to win that round. So it's a case of first person to put 5 dudes there. And in terms of outnumbering the Outlaws, in a 2 to 3 player game, it is very easy to get killed off by the Outlaws, because it only takes a few barrels to put it in such a state that chances are you're not going to outnumber them. In a 5 and 6 player game though, the Outlaws are beyond a joke. They just do not ever win. They can't win, you know, unless several players are constantly fishing barrels, which doesn't really happen because there's not a lot of ways to get barrels. You are basically just completely outwitting the Outlaws without even a second thought. So you're always getting the bonus side, which means the only person who loses a dude is the one person who didn't contribute any. Great, so I'll go there on an action, and while I'm putting dudes out on the map in various other places, I'll put one guy in the shootout. Great, I don't lose another dude, and I really didn't lose much by putting one dude there. Let's go on to aesthetics. So aesthetics, this is a definite high point, A+ point for this game. You know, Frontier games, Final Frontier games have got like this gorgeous artwork style. I mean, look at that. That is a beautiful cover. I mean, the name is boring as all get out. Coloma, wasn't it? What, boring. But you look at that cover and you think, oh, I want to try this one. And the same goes for some pretty good player aids. You know, a lot of pieces. I mean, this is just one person's set of pieces, and you've got a wooden pioneer, wagon, lots of little meeple dudes, custom dudes, a dial, bit like Fantasy Flight, where you turn it to select what action you're doing. 6 of these, so that's quite a lot already. You've got, you know, various player boards, which are, you know, nice and colourful and detailed in artwork. And best of all, you have the board itself. Now, I can't get the board out here, but look, you can see it in the pictures. And the board is covered in lots of gorgeous artwork. It really does bring that Wild West theme out. And the dial in the middle that turns for the actions, very good. Part of it is magnetic, so the barker tile just basically snaps onto it. And you turn it, and it stays in place. Cranial Creations, you might want to take notes here for your Barrage game. Maybe this is how you do spinning wheels, okay? Not like Barrage, do them like this. If all games had this kind of dial with like a magnetic clasp, oh, we'd be in a better place. But yeah, I can't fault any component in this or any part of the artwork. It's really that good. Although, what does bring it down from an A star rating to an A is that the insert is a bit naff. You know, the insert does not easily fit the components in a clear, precise way for easy setup and takedown. You know, and they, again, publishers, will you start putting detailed drawings of how to pack your game away in your insert at the end? Seriously, if you're going to make an insert, put a diagram in the book. It's not hard, it's not expensive, you've already made this big rule book, you don't need to worry about a little bit of, you know, a few extra P per book in order to print this page. Do it.
Everybody got that?
And so, as such, I chucked the insert. Yeah, screw the insert. Bagging the player pieces by colour and what they need is far more efficient than anything that insert will do for you. They tried, but no. Immersion of theme, number A, immersion of theme. Theme's actually pretty good here. You know, I mean, I'm not necessarily like, yee-haw, you know, like shooting guns everywhere, but the artwork brings the theme out. Everything on the board looks quintessentially Wild West. You've got dudes, which, like I say, I didn't even realise were a thing, but apparently, I forget the exact meaning of it, but, you know, dudes are a thing in the Wild West. You know, it was a name that was used. Somebody had to tell me at the table, and it's like, okay, cool. You know, you have got outlaws that you're having a shootout. You are, you know, surveying bridges and, you know, surveying rivers and bridges. That's what they did. They built these bridges. You've got the horses. You've got the wagon wheel going around. There's a lot of terminology and a lot of thought put into this to make it so that the Wild West theme works. You might be able to paste a different theme on here, but it would take more effort than with a lot of other Euro games. So they certainly have tried. Although at the end of the day, this is still a simultaneous action selection engine builder. So there is some dry elements to it. You know, I'm not necessarily, I kind of have to hammer up a bit in order to get the theme across to a great extent. But there's effort here, and I respect them for that. You know, they could have made this bone dry as you like. But no, I mean, even I suppose with the Wild West thing, you could even argue that the busting on the tile, that tension with all the pioneers going at each other, is actually relatively thematic as well. So, all in all, yeah, I was pleased with it. You know, it immerses people enough to start making references to the Wild West, to start making comments, even though it's not exactly dripping with the Wild West theme. For that, you need to go to something like Wild Western Legends, but this is definitely more immersive for me than Great Western Trail. I've got to get it into every video at this rate, which is not exactly great for a game I don't like. But finally, longevity. Longevity, this one, the problem with it is that you've got a mini expansion in the box. It adds one element, build hotels, another way to get points. You might as well throw it into every game, really. It's pretty straightforward. The player powers, again, throw them into every game. They're not a mini expansion. The game will last a while purely because you do have the ability to play it with 6 players. Solo is actually pretty good. It's a decent solo mode in here and quite challenging. The 2-player I'm not a fan of. It's another one of these bot variants, and I just don't like bot variants in games. They don't work. This one, it's okay, but I would not want to play this with 2 players because the tension is gone from that wheel. 3 and 4 is a speedier game, but the problem is you lose that tension on the wheel. 5 and 6 adds more tension on the wheel, but then makes the shootout a waste of time. So it's difficult to gauge what the best player count is of this, and I still think it's probably 4, possibly 5, I think is a sweet spot. But it works with 6, it works with 3, it's just not perfect at any particular player count, unfortunately. But you do have that far range. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of variety in the game in terms of stuff you're seeing. Everybody has their own deck of cards. You will see that whole deck pretty much, especially if you mill through it all. The bridges do chop and change. You know, they'll have different objectives, but whoopee-doo. One game you need a lot of horses. One game you need a lot of barrels. Doesn't really dramatically affect the game that much. It's just, what am I getting points for? I'll go grab it. The wagon map doesn't change. There's no difference with bonuses that you get on there. The player powers are fine. They're good player powers, but they're not game-breaking player powers. And to be honest, if you have that player power, it pretty much dictates you need to abuse this power like crazy because it's a waste if you don't. So I feel that this one's not going to have the longevity as some other games might have, but it does have the wide player range base, which is an advantage. Sierra West was pretty much only worth it, I felt, with 1 and 2 players, because 3 and 4 just dragged the game out like crazy. With this one, though, I could see the argument for playing it solo, as well as 3, 4, 5, and 6, depending on your preference with what I've mentioned earlier. I just don't see 2 players going well with this one. So it will last a few games, I suspect, but I don't think this is going to be one you're going to be taking off the shelf regularly to get played. I think this is like, every now and again, bring it out, it will still feel good, it will still play well. So my final word on Coloma is that it's a half-decent engine builder with some good mechanics to increase tension as well as interaction among players. However, its slightly linear progression of paths to victory, as well as some questionable player scaling, does detract it from being what could have been a significant great game, and instead brings it to a good one. So I think that this one deserves a solid, a solid or a close enough 7 out of 10. It's good, and I think you should give this one a try, particularly if Sierra West was kind of to your liking as well, or if you've seen any of his other work. But it certainly looks the part, it will draw the eye on the table, and it doesn't take too long. I mean, more than 2 hours is not, less than 2 hours is good for a decent Euro game, and this one I think will entertain quite a few people. It's just not quite bowling me over as much. I felt it had the potential to, but doesn't quite. But I don't want it to fall under the radar. I feel that this one has some potential in it. So if you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel, ding the bell. I know people question what does that mean. I think it's basically a YouTube slang term for ring the bell. So ring that bell, subscribe. Check out my Patreon if you want to subscribe to that. Check out me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check out my other videos, my top 10s recently. And, there's plenty enough there for you, including my podcast. So share what you can on social media and get the word out there. So that's it for me. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple review. And remember, regardless of who you're shooting up in the Old West, it's still only a game. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.